I wasn't going to film tonight, and then I did a calendar and realized that if we wanted to finish it before we were back at school, that we'd have to read every day, except for the weekends. You're welcome. That's how much I love you. So that's why I'm not filming in my usual filming spot. So thanks for being patient with me. So I just wanted to go through and talk about chapter 3 before you guys get started on reading it. So we have met the Amoses. They are horrible human beings. Todd treats everybody like garbage. Is obviously not the family for Bud. They're not going to be taking care of him in the future and clearly don't want him to be a part of the family. So on the bottom of page 21, in the bottom paragraph, I want you to pay attention to the words that the author used and what kind of feeling you're supposed to get. How is he describing it? Why is he choosing this word? It didn't take too long for my eyes to get used to the dark. There was a gray gas can in one corner next to a bunch of gray rakes and a pile of gray rags, and a gray tire next to some gray fishing poles. Maybe Mr. Amos only pretended to lock the door. So that whole thing about everything being gray and describing it, so obviously they're trying to convey that it's a dark place, but also the feeling of the word gray. Think about that. Like if you're thinking about how we use the word gray and how we use color. Color actually evokes strong emotions. If we describe somebody as being angry, we describe red, right? And that's a lot of the color that we draw. It's on the color of emojis when we're trying to convey anger. When we're talking about somebody being sad, we call them blue, and we use the color blue to mean sadness. Happiness is usually a cheerful color, so it's usually a bright yellow, right? So thinking about that author's tone, the author purposely picked the word gray. It wasn't just because it was a good word. It's because it really conveys a meaning about the darkness and also how Bud feels. Like describing something as gray is not saying, I'm on my way to success. I'm going to be free soon. It really is building the tone of the story. The author chose that word on purpose. So think about that when you're reading it. Like try to get yourself into that mood of what you're supposed to be feeling and what Bud is feeling during this time. The other part that I just love in this chapter is describing his friend Bugs. So on page 23, talking about all these bugs and roaches crawling around because he's locked in the shed, right? I remember what happened to my best friend Bugs when a cockroach crawled in his ear one night at the home. 4 grown folks had held Bugs down whilst they tried to pull it out with a pair of tweezers, but the only thing that did was pull the roach's back legs off. When they were digging around in Bugs' ears with the tweezers, you'd have thought they were pulling his legs off, not some cockroaches. I never heard a kid scream that loud. After about 15 minutes of Bugs screaming the joint down, they said they were going to have to take him to the emergency room to get the roach out. It was almost morning when Bugs got back. Everyone was asleep except me. I waited until they put him in his bed and turned off the lights. I said, "Did they get it out?" He said, "Oh, hi, Bud. Yeah, they got him." "Did it hurt a lot?" "Nope." "Were you scared?" "Nope." "Then how come you're screaming so doggone loud?" He said, "I didn't know I was. I probably couldn't hear me screaming because that roach was so loud." I'd seen lots of roaches, but I never heard of one that made any sound. I said, "Loud how?" "Well, Bugs ain't so different from us as you'd think. Soon as he saw those tweezers coming at him, he was pretty terrified and commenced to screaming. Screaming in English, too, not some bug language like you'd expect from a roach." "Yeah? What did he say?" "All he kept yelling was, 'My legs! My legs! Why have they done this to my legs?'" I just thought that was so funny that they're having this story about these cockroaches' legs and this cockroach screaming its head off. It just makes me chuckle every time I read it. So as we go through this story, Bud is a 10-year-old boy who is in this situation. He feels very unsafe. He's very scared and very alone. And he comes across to the scene, which again makes me chuckle, where he is convinced that there is a vampire and that the vampire is in his bat form in his shed. A lot of kids always ask me every year, why did Bud believe that there was a vampire? If I was locked in the shed, I would not go, vampire, clearly. You have to remember that Bud is from a different time. He's born in the 30s or the late 20s, and he is from a different time in America. People did not have TV in their homes. People rarely went to movies, especially during the Depression. You couldn't afford to. There was no money. There was no extra money going around. And our world wasn't the way it was. You get images all the time through the internet, through even cartoon programming for little kids, through movies that we see. There's so much stuff being thrown at you that Bud did not ever experience. He was never prepped for fear in the way that movies make people scared and make them realize that it's not real, it's just a movie. He's very, very innocent. He grew up in a time where there wasn't that constant push and image and scariness all around him. So he's not experienced in the world. He's not a worldly person. He's had to grow up different because he's lost his mom and he's living in a home and he's having to negotiate and get himself safe around people that aren't always safe to be around. But he really is still very easily convinced of things. He's not very streetwise, right? So he is convinced that there's this bat and this vampire in its sleeping form in this shed that he's in. And he has to figure out how to get himself out and how to move beyond. And there's a twist in this chapter of what happens. But the very last line that I also want you to think about while you're reading is what he says here. The very last sentence. Aha, you doggone Amoses. That hurt. But now I get my revenge. So after reading this, what do you think Bud's going to do next? Where do you think he's going to go? I hope you're enjoying this book as much as I am. I can't wait to see your responses about what you think is going to happen next. Talk to you guys soon.